Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Coming to Independent Lens.
To be or not to be? That is the question.
Hard work and determination. Strong qualities in any teenager.
I have to finish school. That is not a choice.
But when you're homeless, they are essential.
I really want to go to college.
Join Alaska Public Media on Friday, April 17th from 12 to 1 p.m. for a screening of The Homestretch, chat, and conversation about homeless teens. More at alaskapublic.org.
Indie Alaska is an innovative weekly web series capturing the diverse and colorful lifestyle of Alaskans. Real stories of everyday Alaskans at work and play. Supported in part by Alyeska Pipeline Service Company.
The National Weather Service.
And good Thursday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. And as always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information no matter what part of Alaska you're in. You can reach weather.gov/Alaska or arh.noaa.gov. Give us a call on the weather info line at 800-472-0391. You can find information all day long those two ways, or by heading to Facebook, NWS Alaska, Twitter, NWS Alaska will take you there as well. And if you continue your Twitter conversation with AKwx, we'll know we're watching that hashtag there, and that brings a lot more people into the conversation. And on YouTube, you can get your daily afternoon map briefing there on YouTube anytime. Also, look for the search term AKwx TV. You'll get this broadcast a little bit later in the evening, and you can go back and watch last night's too. Or if you miss a piece of that, go back and watch it a little bit later on in the evening. Here's a look at the Dillingham radar image from just a little while ago this afternoon. And all of this is the radar beam sensing precipitation across southwestern Alaska. Here's Nustahoyuk, Dillingham, King Salmon, and you can see southwestern Alaska and Bristol Bay's in view here. This is snow. It looks green there on the radar picture. That is the radar beam sensing the cloud dropping precipitation across southwestern Alaska. This band of snow was moving from northwest to south and east pretty much a good chunk of the afternoon and early morning hours. And as it did so, it certainly left a decent amount of accumulating snow in many of the villages there in southwestern Alaska. King Salmon picked up about, I think about 6 inches of snow. At least there's 6 inches on the ground at this point. Here's some of the reports that we got from southwest. Kaliganik saw about 6 to 8 inches. Nustahoyuk around 3 to 4, and Igagik about 3 to 4 inches of snow. So Guyana, we really appreciate those snow reports, and weather reports are welcome anytime from southwest Alaska or any part of Alaska. Simply use social media or contact your local VPSO and relay that information to your local National Weather Service office. We really do appreciate your weather reports all the time. Here's a look out across the west, and the Bering Sea satellite picture still showing that north and westerly flow coming down the coast. And again, this had that snow wrapping right into the Bristol Bay region here, and it just hovered right in place all day long. Well, the main core of the very active part of the atmosphere, the jet stream, is coming out of eastern Asia, and that is still well to the south of Alaska. The rest of what you see across the Bering Sea is getting drier and drier. Everything across the southern Bering Sea coast has a lot of dry air just sitting right north of the Aleutians, and then we get back into the colder, wetter air sitting across the ice pack. The ice, too, is changing. We'll talk about that in just a little while. As we look at the rest of Alaska, you can see drier air just to the west of a band of clouds working in from the south along one frontal boundary that's moving into southeast. We have another band of clouds sitting across the Gulf of Alaska, and then we're back to the dry air that extends all the way out across the western Bering Sea. We'll put this in motion here. The overall circulation is right here across southwest and right over Kodiak in the western Gulf of Alaska. That is pushing all of that moisture into southeast. More rain is expected with this, and then we'll get another surge of colder and drier air coming in behind it. Up across south central and southwest, it's mainly snow across the west coast, and then periods of rain and snow across the Cook Inlet region, Prince William Sound, and even the Copper River Basin. And then north of the Alaska Range, things really dry out. There will be some bands of snow that start to sit up here that's rotating around the northern side of this coming out of western Canada. We expect to see those on the surface chart here in not too long. And then across the Arctic coast, bands of snow are working across the coastal areas, and there's probably some areas of blowing snow with that as well. Watch the loop one more time, and you can see how all of this is kind of sloshing up over the Alaska Range, really drying out across the upper Yukon, and then working itself back down from north to south across the western coast. Here's a look at the surface chart. We have two fronts here. One of those is falling apart very quickly across southeast. That's what's bringing some pockets of heavy rainfall across southeast. One band is just firing up now across the Gulf. In fact, there were some areas of lightning that were detected out across the Gulf earlier today. Snow showers continue around Prince William Sound. Rainfall for the Kenai Peninsula southwest. There's that band of snow we were just talking about across southwestern Alaska out toward King Salmon. Periods of rain and snow showers for the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern chain and the Arctic coast. Still looking at some light snow there, and temperatures are actually fairly mild as we look at them. Today, Barrow's temperature only dropped to 0 during the overnight hours. As we get into tonight, the front will continue working itself eastward. We're expecting periods of rain and snow to mix across the north and western Gulf all the way out toward Kodiak. To the west, it's all going to be snow showers there. Some heavier winds there, perhaps around the central and eastern chain in the Alaska Peninsula. Southwest, still looking at snow showers there. A lot of that will start to diminish with time. A winter weather advisory was posted for areas around Bristol Bay earlier today. We expect that weather to improve. And across the Arctic coast, snow showers are expected there tonight. Most areas not really looking at any heavier accumulation. One place that might see some light accumulation, though, will be in the upper Yukon Valley, though. And as we get into Friday, as low pressure works its way up past Tok, past Eagle, you'll expect that to bring in some colder and wetter air moving in from western Yukon. Out across the interior and really most areas across the Brooks Range and south and west, Kobuk, Noatak valleys, all the way out toward the Yukon and Kuskokwim valleys, drier air is starting to move in from the east to west. Out across the Bering, you'll see more of a scattering of snow showers there. Looks like the central and eastern chain should see scattered snow showers continue all the way up toward the Pribilofs as we head into Friday. For south central, the air is just too warm. It looks like most of that's going to go back and forth between mostly rain, but occasionally some snow. And many of you probably saw that today, whether you were in Wasilla or the Susitna Valley or a little bit further out toward the west. Rain is expected in Kodiak. We expect most areas in southeast to be looking at rain. Once you get up into the Chilkoot and the White Pass regions, you should see a little bit better chance for accumulating snow there. But even those snowfall levels are starting to rise a little bit. As we get into Saturday, very little change in really any one place. The overall circulation stays the same across the northern Gulf. It keeps southeast on the warm side. It keeps south central kind of stuck in the yucky in-betweens. And out across the west, scattered snow showers continue for the Bering Sea coast communities, the west coast. But we do start to see one of these chunks of snow from western Yukon move a little bit further west into the interior. And so there will likely be some accumulating snow around the Fort Yukon area and points east, maybe as far north as Arctic Village. And snow and blowing snow for the Arctic coast, so we'll watch for some accumulation there as well. Same old for south central and Kodiak Island, periods of rain around Kodiak, rain and snow showers for south central. Here's how it goes for temperatures today. Fairly mild day in southeast. The warm spot today was not in southeastern Alaska. Actually, it was 50 degrees in Wasilla. In the meantime, southeast was generally in the mid to upper 40s. Sitka about 45, about the same there around Juneau, Haines, and Skagway, around Ketchikan, Craig, Metlakatla, and Hyder. We're looking at temperatures also hovering in the mid to upper 40s. As you get into Prince William Sound, a little bit cooler there today. Cordova and Valdez and Seward all looking at snow at one point today. 35 around Portage, 41 around Homer, 45 for Kenai. Anchorage, again, hovering in the lower 40s by late afternoon. The Susitna Valley saw temperatures in the 30s and 40s. Up around Fairbanks today, mid 40s, and Eagle and Northway were both in the lower 40s to mid 40s by the end of the day. Fort Yukon 45. Anaktuvuk Pass was 23 degrees. The Arctic coast saw temperatures in the single digits, a little bit warmer out around Kaktovik at 17 this afternoon. Kotzebue Sound temperatures were in the 20s and 30s. As you get out toward Tin City, it was 18, about 16 there for St. Lawrence Island and Gamble. Unalakleet was 30 degrees, about the same there in Nome this afternoon. Grayling showed 37, McGrath 44. Sparabon was in the lower 40s, and as you got into southwestern Alaska, temps were generally just shy of 40 degrees. Dillingham showed 39. Around Kodiak, 30s and 40s today. As you get more of the Bering Sea coast communities, Port Heiden and Pilot Point saw some milder weather there. But the further south you went, you got a little bit more into that colder flow coming off the Bering, and temperatures there on westward were easily in the 30s. Bristol Bay and areas west probably hovered at or just below the freezing point for a good chunk of the day. St. George made it to 32. Adak and Atka were both in the mid-30s. Now, overnight lows for the interior will drop back into the lower to mid-20s tonight. Southwest, upper 20s and lower 30s. Most of the chain will be right there with you. 33 in Kodiak, South Central hovering close to freezing. Southeast likely in the mid to upper 30s. Some places a little bit closer to 40 like the outer coast. The northern coastline in the single digits there. Nome's looking at 16. High temperatures tomorrow should make it back into the mid-40s for Fairbanks. Another mild day for you. 47 in Eagle, 12 in Barrow, 13 in Kaktovik. Nome's 23. McGrath looking at 34 degrees. Southwest in the mid to upper 30s. 43 in Kodiak and upper 30s for the chain, as well as areas around Dutch Harbor and Unalaska. St. Paul at 30 tomorrow. On to flying weather now. MVFR conditions are expected thanks to blowing snow across the Arctic coast and an occasional snow shower. A better chance for worse visibility right across the southwestern coast due to falling snow. Again, some of that could obscure visibility and drop that ceiling fairly quickly. Otherwise, MVFR through most of the Bering Sea and a large chunk of the Gulf of Alaska. Watch for some poor visibility here due to rainfall across the coastline just west of Yakutat and also just to the east, almost across Sound. And otherwise, MVFR conditions for most of southeastern Alaska tomorrow. Your passes, though, most areas look pretty good as far as visibility and ceilings go. VFR for AKwx and Adigan Pass tomorrow, so maybe pretty good conditions there to get some flying in. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, we expect similar conditions there, much improved over the last several days. Rainy Pass expected to be VFR. Windy Pass, we expect that to be visual through most of your Friday. Isabel Pass at this point looks to be visual flight rule. Mentasta Pass, so we're going to call all clear for this point. VFR conditions there for Friday. Tanita Pass looks pretty good for your Friday afternoon too. Portage Pass, we're going to see MVFR at least on the eastern side, and we expect to see VFR on the western side and really through most of the pass. But flying through Prince William Sound tomorrow will at least net you some MVFR conditions with rain and snow showers in the region. So watch for that, and the same goes for Chilkoot and White Pass, especially around the south entrances. Once you get a little bit further north and into the pass, things should be pretty okay. Here's how freezing levels shape up this afternoon. You'll notice across southeastern Alaska, freezing levels now have shifted eastward once again. That warmer air has retreated across southeast, and our surface freezing line has dropped below St. Paul and St. George now, still north of the Aleutians. Most of Alaska and mainland is below freezing as we start out tomorrow morning. Icing potential is still there. Our upper level low pressure system's hovering right about here, and it has little pieces of moisture that's rotating around it. And as such, we've got several areas that have the potential for some moisture to be moving around and cold enough to present us with some isolated or light icing threats there along the west coast, the north coast. The interior looks to be pretty good for right now, and areas along the Gulf, especially along some of the fronts that are working into southeastern Alaska. Those freezing levels will probably start out around 5,000 to 6,000 feet or so before you run into the moisture and the cold at the same time. So again, light to isolated moderate in all the areas shown here. The jet stream has a trough of low pressure sitting across the southern west coast, but the predominant weather feature that's really affecting Alaska is this very fast Pacific jet around 100 to 130 knots. That's well south of Alaska. It does take a pretty sharp bend northward along a northwestern American ridge that's helping to keep that southerly flow moving moisture and active weather right up against southeastern Alaska. Other than that, we don't have any big intrusions from colder air up across the Arctic. All of that is being pushed westward thanks to this position here, the trough and the high pressure system across eastern Asia. So we're still sitting in no man's land. The weather systems that are affecting Alaska are pretty much sitting tight. Nothing's moving them in or moving them out at this point. At 9,000 feet, our low pressure system across the northern Gulf is bringing in west and southwesterly winds into southeastern Alaska. Winds across the interior are fairly light, around 5 to 15 knots or so. We have a northeasterly flow coming down across the Bering Strait, more of a north and westerly flow on the southern side of that trough with winds around 35 to as high as 50 knots. At 3,000 feet, you'll notice very similar position of the low, and wind speeds again really not a whole lot different. We have that south and southeasterly flow coming into southeastern Alaska. Winds there around 25 to as high as 50 knots. A lighter easterly flow working across the Brooks Range. Those winds around 10 to as high as 15 knots or so, and then our north and easterly wind crossing through the Bering at around 20 to 25 knots. This is also encouraging some of that blowing snow we see at the surface there, keeping that pressure gradient a little bit stronger up across the north coast. Now, as you get out across the Aleutians, winds are coming in pretty much parallel to the islands until they get into the Gulf. You're looking at winds from 30 to as high as 45 knots there, a little bit stronger in the lee of the Alaska Peninsula, and those are up to 40 to 50 knots there. So the potential for some gusts, especially in those gap winds there. We'll have to watch for that in the coming days. turbulence. We've easily painted the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, and really all of the chain, especially below 4,000 feet, with the risk for some light, maybe even isolated moderate turbulence there. We'll also watch for some gap winds to develop across the inner coast throughout southeastern Alaska tomorrow as the pressure gradient's tightening up just a little bit more. That'll be below 6,000 feet. Across the west coast, especially along the areas around the Capes, probably looking at some light chop there as the wind's zipping on and off the land and over the water. Below 4,000 feet, you should expect some bumps there in the Yoke and around Norton Sound and up around Kotzebue Sound. We'll also watch for some areas around the Brooks Range to watch for some chop there, light to isolated moderate, generally below 4,000 feet. That's a look at your aviation forecast. I'll be back in just a few minutes with an update on the sea ice edge and a look at the rest of your marine forecast. Stay tuned.
Venus between the clusters.
Hey there, stargazers. I'm Dean Regas, astronomer for the Cincinnati Observatory.
And I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida. We're here to help you find your way around the sky tonight. Hey Dean, what's the brightest planet?
That would be Venus.
And what are the two brightest open star clusters you can see from the northern hemisphere?
The Hyades and the Pleiades.
Yep. And what do you get when you put them all together in the sky?
A Hyades, Venus, Pleiades sandwich.
More or less. Because this week, dazzlingly bright Venus will be wandering between these two star clusters, the Pleiades and the Hyades, and make a pretty sight in the evening sky.
Let's show you.
Okay, we have our sky set up for Wednesday, April 8th at 9:30 p.m. facing west. Low in the sky, you'll see something so bright you might think it's a UFO at first. That bright light is actually the planet Venus.
Venus is often called Earth's sister planet, since we are both round, rocky objects similar in size. But it turns out that Venus is one twisted sister. She has clouds that trap in the sun's heat so well that her surface swelters at around 900 degrees Fahrenheit. Not a pretty place to visit. I'll stay on Earth, thank you very much.
Unlike the stars around it, Venus will wander through the constellations. We're going to shift our time forward one day at a time to see how she'll move this week. Here's where Venus will be on April 9th at 9:30 p.m., and April 10th, April 11th, April 12th, and April 13th.
Venus doesn't move a lot each night, but the other stars seem to be getting lower in the western sky, and Venus on April 13th is right between the two open star clusters called the Hyades and the Pleiades. Let's zoom in for a closer look. Okay. Now we can see our Hyades, Venus, Pleiades sandwich a little better. Let's start with the Hyades. You can see the brighter Hyades with the naked eye in a little V shape. They form the face of Taurus the bull with the bright star named Aldebaran. That's the bull's eye.
The Hyades formed at about the same time from a huge nebula and lie about 150 light years from Earth. They're much fainter than the Pleiades, so they look a lot better in a pair of binoculars. The Pleiades will be just to the right of Venus next week, so hopefully the planet's glare won't obstruct your view of the cluster. They're also known as the Seven Sisters since the ancient Greeks could make out 7 stars with the naked eye.
One sharp-eyed first grader nicknamed these stars the Dinky Dipper, since they look like a super tiny scooper in the sky. Zoomed in, we can see that there are way more than 7 stars in this cluster, more like hundreds, all made from the same nebula, all resting about 400 light years from us.
Wait a second, 400 light years? They're over twice as far away as the Hyades, but they're so much brighter.
Notice the color of these sisters? These blue stars are way hotter and larger than the stars in the Hyades. Alcyone here, for instance, is 10 times wider than our sun and shines 2,400 times brighter.
That's a hot sister. As the days go by, Venus will remain fairly high in the sky while the two clusters get lower and lower.
That means the Hyades and Pleiades will be heading off into the sunset and soon will be tough to see.
But Venus will continue to shine in the evening skies through July. And one extra special night coming up will be Tuesday, April 21st, when a slender crescent moon joins Venus and Aldebaran.
That'll be a nice sight.
Look west this week just after sunset and you'll find the scorching hot and really bright planet Venus.
Try watching Venus every clear night. That way you can see how she moves and how she'll go in between two open star clusters, the Hyades on the left and the Pleiades on the right.
And if you have binoculars, get them out and behold the many stars in the two clusters.
The universe is an amazing place as long as you keep looking up.
Now, if you are ever able to look up into the nighttime sky looking at Pleiades and not remember now that it's called the Dinky Dipper, you are a better stargazer than I am there. I will unfortunately never forget the Dinky Dipper now. Here's a look at the sea ice out across the Bering Sea. You can see the edge itself is still well north of St. Paul, still south of Macquarie though, but there are a lot of changes in the concentration, and there's several areas of opening water here across a good chunk of the sea ice pack there. So a lot of changes thanks to low pressure sitting out across the western Gulf. But remember, right now we're still in that colder flow. The thing that's really dominating the ice picture, though, especially for areas around St. Paul and St. George, even as pieces are breaking off of this pack and drifting southward, they're moving into considerably warmer water. So that's what's keeping the ice pack from dropping any further south at this point, even with that northerly flow in place. And you'll see very little ice here across Cook Inlet at this point as well. So a lot of changes. Anytime you'd like to check on the ice pack, you can do it with an interactive map. You can do it with the Sea Ice Outlook there that's on the same page. A lot of different ways to get the information there. weather.gov/anchorage/ice.php. The ice is analyzed every single day of the week. Here's a look at southeast now. You'll notice the winds coming in from the south and southeast across the inner and outer coastlines. They're generally about 20 knots or so. The Lynn Canal's looking at 4-foot seas, 5-foot seas down around Clarence Strait. The outer coastline still looking at winds around, probably 20 knots or so. More of a south and westerly flow coming into the Dixon entrance and Craig. More of a 13 to 14-foot sea as you head up around Sitka and north toward Cross Sound. By Saturday, you're looking at the same conditions. They're pretty much on the inside. Seas still around 4 to 5 feet, but you see that wind shift taking place here across the outer coastline. That's that next disturbance moving ashore. That means there's going to be a better chance for some wind and some rain across the coastal areas on the inside and outside. Look for those west and southwesterly winds to hold around 20 knots and seas still around 13 to 14 feet. So the biggest change you'll notice, though, is that offshore flow north of Cross Sound up toward Icy Bay and Yakutat. That's at 20 knots with a 12-foot sea. For south central, you can see the circulation wrapping into our low pressure system sitting here out across the central Gulf. North and east winds coming down Cook Inlet around 10 to 20 knots or so across the Barren Islands with 5 to 10-foot seas. Looks like a stronger westerly flow now east of Kodiak Island with a 40-knot wind and a 19-foot sea. Easterlies inside of Prince William Sound with a 3-foot sea. And then northeasterlies diminish as we get into Saturday with a 2-foot sea on the inside, 9-foot seas on the outside. A very light and variable flow in the northern Cook Inlet with westerlies continuing across the Barrens and Kodiak Island. Those winds diminish down to 35 knots on the eastern side with Shelikof Strait at 30 knots with an 8-foot sea. Across the Alaska Peninsula, northwesterly winds there coming into Bristol Bay at 40 knots, so still looking at some stronger winds there. And again, the possibility of some snow showers as we saw today. Westerly flow across the northern Pacific, 40 to 45 knots, 16 to 21-foot seas there as we get into Saturday. Winds in all areas diminish, but we'll keep that westerly flow going into the weekend. 8 to 10-foot seas in Bristol Bay and the Bering Sea coast, and 12-foot seas on the North Pacific side. As we get into the Aleutians, westerlies around 35 to 40 knots or so. Look for 14 to 17-foot seas in the Bering Sea coast and generally 14-foot seas on the Pacific coast there. 35 knots as you head out toward Kiska and Attu, all that coming in from the west. As we get into Saturday, a little bit of a shift there with the northwesterly change around Kiska to Attu at 15 knots, 15-foot seas, I should say. Northwesterlies around Adak and Atka, and westerlies continue for the central and the eastern islands, anywhere around 30 to 35 knots for your Saturday. For For the west coast, north and northwesterly winds will be the predominant feature we see, crossing St. Lawrence Island at 25 knots and then picking up a little bit more as we pass some of the capes, 25 to 35 knots with a 13-foot sea there. Northwesterlies around the Pribilofs with an 11-foot sea and 6-foot seas for the St. Matthew Island waters, watching for freezing spray, of course, just south of that ice edge. As we get into Saturday, not a whole lot of change there. Winds still hovering around 20 to 25 knots with northerlies around St. Lawrence Island and St. Matthew, and then more of a northwesterly flow on either side of Nunivak Island and in Kuskokwim Bay. That's 25 knots with an 8-foot sea, 20 knots from the north and west around the Pribilofs with a 9-foot sea. Looking at the north and easterly winds from Barrow down to Point Lay, Cape Lisburne and southward, those are northerly winds at 30 knots, and east and northeasterly winds for the eastern and central Beaufort seacoast there. That's around 15 knots. It was fairly mild today around Kaktovik, but with a northeasterly wind cutting in a little bit more on Saturday, temperatures will likely drop off a bit. Look for 15 to 20 knots there across the Beaufort seacoast and into the Chukchi seacoast. Wind speeds also diminished just a little bit, down to 20 knots from the north and northeast, and northerlies outside of Kotzebue Sound at 30 knots. That's a look at Saturday in the north. Recapping tonight's weather, a front is shifting into southeastern Alaska. It's one of two systems, with first one's affecting you right now. Later tonight, that second wave will start to shift in. You'll see periods of rainfall there. Colder flow around south central and Prince William Sound down toward Kodiak Island. Could mean rain and snow showers. Really not much of an accumulation potential, though. There could be some isolated effects down around Homer. Up north around Eagle, we expect some light snow showers there, and mainly it's wind and snow showers for the northern coast, and down across the southwestern coast, still an opportunity for some light snowfall accumulation there. You'll probably notice the wind more than anything else. Scattered snow showers continue for the southern Bering Sea as well as the Aleutian chain. That trend should take you well into the weekend. We won't have any major surges of temperature or wind passing around the region. It's just the same old picture here with low pressure hovering in the northern Gulf of Alaska and the flow rotating around in a counterclockwise fashion. Watch for a chance for some accumulating snow around Eagle and northward toward Arctic Village and the eastern Brooks Range. An opportunity for blowing snow in the north and the continued north and northwesterly flow across the southwestern coast heading into Saturday. That's your Alaska weather. Thanks for watching.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.